she was staring at the mirror again. It was late, the kind of late where silence feels heavier, where your thoughts echo back louder than they should. She didn't cry, but her hands gripped the sink like she was trying to hold herself together. She looked fine. She looked successful. She looked like someone who had moved on. But that's the trick with the shadow. It hides behind the smile, beneath the routine, underneath everything we pretend to be. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet denial dressed up as strength. This is how it begins for most people, not with a breakthrough, but with a breakdown, a subtle unraveling, a question that won't go away, a voice that whispers, what if the problem isn't out there? What if it's in here? Shadow work. Music shadow work. It sounds mystical, maybe even a little dramatic, but it's one of the most psychologically profound paths a human being can take. And here's the truth. Most people will never take it, not because they can't, but because they won't dare look inside long enough to see what's really there. Carl Jung, the depth psychologist who first coined the term the shadow, believed that every person carries a hidden part of themselves, a side that contains everything we've rejected, repressed, denied, or feared, and that if we don't face it, it will control us quietly, constantly. Think about it. Have you ever overreacted to something small, like someone's tone of voice, and later thought, that wasn't me? Or maybe you've had moments where you self-sabotaged, pushed away something good, or fell into a cycle you swore you'd escaped. That wasn't random. That was your shadow at work. The shadow isn't evil. It isn't something to get rid of. It's a part of you, born the moment you learned what parts of yourself were acceptable and which ones needed to be hidden. As children, we're all told in subtle and overt ways, don't cry like that. Don't act too excited. Don't speak too much. Be good. Be nice. Be quiet. So we buried things. Anger, desire, shame, creativity, even love. Shadow work is the process of going back and unairing those parts. Not to relive the pain, but to reintegrate the self, to become whole again. But here's what they don't tell you. Shadow work is not glamorous. It's not sitting with crystals and incense asking the universe for peace. It's sitting in silence while your mind shows you everything you've spent years running from. And yet this is where freedom begins. Because until you see your shadow, you can't stop it from running your life. Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's the essence of shadow work. It's not a self-help hack. It's a confrontation with your deepest truths. So, where do you start? The first step is awareness. Not dramatic, not mystical, just brutally honest awareness. Start by noticing your triggers. Every time you overreact to someone or something, ask, what part of me is being threatened? Not your ego, deeper than that. Your identity, your worth, your place in the world. Write it down. Not for answers, but for clarity, because the shadow doesn't live in your to-do list. It lives in the recurring emotions that you refuse to process. Second, practice radical self-honesty. We all tell ourselves stories to feel safe. I'm always the victim. I don't need anyone. I'm fine. I've moved on. Shadow work asks, who would you be without that story? And that's terrifying because our identities are often built from our wounds. To let go of the story is to let go of the person we think we are. Next, confront projections. Jung believed that what we hate in others is often what we refuse to see in ourselves. That jealousy, resentment, irritation, they're not always about the other person. They're reflections, mirrors. Shadow work is about noticing those moments and saying, what part of this is about me? Now, here's the paradox. The shadow isn't just the dark. It's also the gold. Jung called it the golden shadow. The brilliance, creativity, power, and love that we've rejected because the world told us it was too much. So shadow work isn't just digging into pain. It's also reclaiming your hidden light. The part of you that was never broken, only buried. And yes, there are tools. Shadow journaling, inner child work, guided meditations, mirror work. But the tools don't matter without the willingness to go inward, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. If you're new to all of this, here are a few places to begin. Start with Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert A. Johnson. It's short, poetic, and cuts to the core. Then move to Meeting the Shadow, a compilation of Jungian thinkers exploring different faces of the unconscious. And if you're brave enough for the deeper waters, read Jung's The Archetypes in the Collective Unconscious. It's not easy, but it's real. You won't be the same after. But here's something you need to know, and this might be the most important truth in this entire video. You don't do shadow work to feel better. You do it to get real. And in that realness, you finally begin to heal. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after your first real moment of shadow work. It's not peace, not yet. It's more like standing in the middle of a storm you've been running from your entire life and finally realizing you're still standing. But here's the thing. No one tells you. The shadow doesn't just live in your past. It lives in your present, in your relationships, in your decisions, in the way you say, "I'm fine" with a smile you don't mean. It shows up when you betray your own boundaries to be loved, when you lash out and then regret it, when you settle not because you want to, but because some part of you believes you don't deserve more. Shadow work is not about remembering what hurt you. It's about realizing how that hurt is still making your choices, and it's not always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it sounds like self-deprecating humor or perfectionism or chronic overgiving or the fear of being truly seen. We think our problems are unique, but most of us are walking around with the same wound. Am I enough? Jung believed that we spend much of our lives constructing masks, what he called the persona, to hide the truth of who we are. Not because we're liars, but because we're afraid. Afraid we're too broken to be loved. Afraid we're too much or not enough. The shadow feeds on that fear. It thrives in the gaps between who we are and who we pretend to be. And here's the paradox. The more you deny your shadow, the more power it gains. Not because it's evil, but because it wants to be seen. Every time you judge someone harshly, that's your shadow trying to show you a disowned part of yourself. Every time you fall into the same relationship pattern, sabotage your goals, or numb yourself with distraction, that's not weakness. That's the unconscious screaming, "Look at me, I'm still here." So, how do you go deeper? Start by slowing down. We live in a world obsessed with speed, with progress, with moving on. But the unconscious doesn't operate on speed. It operates on presence. Sit with your discomfort. Don't escape it. Feel it in your body. Write down what comes up. Ask questions like, what am I really afraid of here? What part of me have I abandoned? Whose voice is in my head when I say I'm not good enough? And then wait, because the shadow doesn't respond to force. It responds to honesty. If you want to go even deeper, try writing a letter. Not to your ex, not to your parents, not to the world, but to the part of yourself you've spent years ignoring. The scared child, the angry teenager, the exhausted adult. Let them speak. Shadow work is not about fixing yourself. It's about facing yourself with honesty, with gentleness, with no more pretending. But here's something crucial to understand. Do not do this work alone. Forever. Yes, you can begin alone, but the deeper you go, the more important it becomes to have someone hold space. A therapist, a coach, a friend who can listen without judgment. Because shadow work isn't linear, you will revisit the same wounds again and again, but each time with more clarity, more courage, more compassion, and you'll begin to notice subtle changes. You'll pause before reacting. You'll speak what you actually feel even when it's hard. You'll stop abandoning yourself just to be accepted. You'll see the masks, and you'll choose whether to wear them. This is what Jung meant by individuation. The journey of becoming your whole self. Not just the version that smiles in public, but the one that cries in private, the one that rages, the one that dreams. Because wholeness isn't perfection, it's truth, and truth, no matter how dark, is what sets you free. Now, let me leave you with something practical, a path forward. Track your emotional spikes. What made you angry, jealous, defensive, or ashamed? Write it down. Name the part of you reacting. Is it your wounded child, your abandoned artist, your inner critic? Naming it gives it form. Sit with that part. Don't argue, just listen. Let it speak through journaling or meditation. Give it compassion. You don't have to agree with it, just witness it. That alone is powerful. Choose differently, not because you're trying to be better, but because you're trying to be whole. And if you want to keep learning, keep going deeper, return to the books I mentioned earlier, but also consider The Shadow Effect by Debbie Ford, Romancing the Shadow by Connie Swag. And if you're ready for something raw, try Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. It's mythic, it's ancient, and it will change how you see yourself. But remember, no book will save you, no quote, no video, because the only person who can meet your shadow is you.